There is a moment after everything you have endured where the world opens. You have crawled through ruin and filth, through hollow depths and poisoned swamps, through corridors where the very walls wished you dead. You have rung 2 bells, as you were told, because someone said it would matter, and perhaps you believed them. Or perhaps you simply had nothing left to do but follow the only thread of purpose offered to you. You have survived a fortress of swinging blades and rolling boulders, a place built by the ancient gods themselves to test whoever might be desperate enough or foolish enough to seek what lay beyond it. You have faced a colossus forged of iron and animated by the bone of a dragon, a guardian that had slain countless seekers before you, and you brought it low. And now, carried aloft by winged demons whose loyalty to the old order remains unexplained, you are set down upon a high balcony, and you look out, and for the first time in what feels like an age, you see something beautiful. Anor Londo stretches before you, vast and golden, bathed in the warm amber of a sun that appears to be perpetually setting. Its spires rise impossibly high, white stone and gold leaf catching light from every angle, buttresses arcing overhead like the ribs of some great cathedral turned inside out. The scale of it is staggering. Every archway, every staircase, every wall is sized for beings far larger than any human. The sky above is clear and luminous, a color you had almost forgotten existed after the gray murk of the Undead Berg and the green-black miasma of Blighttown. There is no decay here, no crumbling stone, no corpse stink, no hollowed moaning, only silence and light and the quiet enormity of a city that seems to have been waiting for you. This is the city of the gods. This is where Lord Gwyn ruled, at the height of the Age of Fire, when the world was young and the first flame burned bright, and the everlasting dragons were a memory growing distant. It was built to embody his dominion, to make visible the authority he claimed after finding his lord soul within the flame and leading the other lords against the ancient dragons. Gwyn wielded sunlight itself, manifested as lightning, and with it, he shattered the stone scales of the dragons and claimed the surface world for his kind. His allies each received their due. See the Scaleless, the traitor dragon who had turned against his own, was granted a dukedom and given the freedom to pursue his obsessive research. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters retreated underground to study the nature of flame. Gravelord Nito descended into the catacombs to oversee the administration of death. But Gwyn claimed the sunlit surface, and upon it he built this city, and from it he ruled. And for a time, perhaps a very long time, it must have been magnificent. What you see now, standing on that high balcony, with the wind in your hair and the golden light warming your face, is the echo of that magnificence. And it is the most welcoming thing you have encountered since you woke in that cold asylum cell with nothing but a broken sword hilt and no memory of who you were. The journey to reach this place was designed to be brutal. Sen's fortress, as Andre the blacksmith will tell you, is an old proving ground built by the ancient gods, and it is the only route leading to Great Anor Londo. The name Sen persists in memory, though whoever Sen was, no item description or scrap of dialogue offers any further detail. The fortress itself speaks clearly enough. Its purpose was to test, and its method was to kill. Swinging axe blades line its narrow walkways. Pressure plates trigger volleys of bolts. Boulders roll through corridors, guided by giants enslaved to the mechanism of the place. And at the bottom of every fall lies a bed of tar or a prowling titanite demon. The serpent men who patrol its halls do not simply kill those who falter. According to the description of the Cage Key, if a hapless adventurer becomes fatigued during an imprudent attempt to overcome the fortress, the serpent men will lock them in a lonely cage, and eventually, unless they have forgotten, drag the victim off to an unspecified fate. The fortress is cruelty made architectural, and it existed solely to ensure that only the strongest, the most determined, the most useful would ever reach the city above. Many tried. The crestfallen merchant, who took on the fortress alone and was broken by it, will warn you, for a century, they have tried and failed. Night King Rendell, Black Iron Tarkus, even the legendary sorcerer Big Hat Logan. You will not stand a chance, he says. You will be eaten alive. That he was wrong about you does not make him wrong about the fortress. It is a mechanism of selection, a sieve through which only the worthy pass. And at the top of it, dormant until disturbed, stands the Iron Golem, a construct of pure iron animated by a core the gods created by fusing the power of a soul with the bone of an everlasting dragon. It has stood there for centuries, and it has slain countless heroes seeking Anor Londo according to its own soul description. It is the last test before the city. It is also, perhaps, the last honest thing about the place. For what awaits beyond the Iron Golem's arena is not what it appears to be. But you do not know that yet. You know only the light and the silence and the scale and the aching relief of arriving somewhere that does not seem to want you dead. The Batwing demons set you down and you descend a grand staircase, and the city unfolds around you, and for a brief, fragile moment, you are allowed to feel something like awe. Anor Londo's architecture is not merely large. It is deliberately, almost aggressively monumental. Every surface communicates power, permanence, and divine right. The buttresses that arc between the buildings are not decorative but structural, designed to allow the walls to reach even greater heights. And the effect is of a city that is reaching upward, straining toward the sun it worships. The cathedral at the city's heart is enormous, its interior capable of holding battles between enormous combatants without feeling cramped, its exterior bristling with spires and carved figures. The designer responsible for Anor Londo, Masanori Waragai, has spoken about visiting the Milan Cathedral in Italy and walking beneath its buttresses, thinking about how extraordinary it would feel to walk upon them. That impulse shaped the level's design, and the player is indeed asked to traverse these buttresses, walking along narrow stone pathways high above the ground, exposed to wind and the arrows of Silver Knight sentries. The city's spiral staircases were said to represent life, and they are everywhere, rotating platforms that connect the various levels of the keep, mechanisms that must be operated to open new paths. The architecture does not welcome you. It processes you. It channels your movement along specific routes, forcing you upward through increasingly hostile corridors, as though the city itself is another test, a continuation of the proving ground below. The buildings are sized for gods, not for humans. The doors are enormous. The staircases are broad enough for giants to walk abreast. The royal sentinels who stand guard at the cathedral entrance are massive armored figures, and they will leave you alone unless you approach too closely or strike at them, as though your presence is tolerated rather than invited. They are passive unless provoked, which is a strange quality for a guardian to possess. It suggests that the city expects compliance expects that anyone who has made it this far will behave, will follow the path laid out for them, will proceed toward the cathedral and the audience that awaits within. The city does not defend against rebellion. It assumes obedience. Inside the keep, the walls are lined with mounted heads, not the heads of any ordinary quarry, but the heads of dragons. These are trophies from the war that began the Age of Fire, when Gwyn and his allies destroyed the everlasting dragons and claimed dominion over the surface world. Mounted and displayed in a manner reminiscent of a hunting lodge, they serve as a reminder of what the gods are capable of, what they have already conquered. The dragons were immortal. Their stone scales could not be pierced, but Gwyn's lightning stripped those scales away, and Seath's betrayal exposed their vulnerability. And now their heads hang on the walls of Gwyn's keep like deer in a country estate. It is a display of absolute victory, meant to be seen, meant to impress, meant to establish beyond any doubt that the beings who built this city were the most powerful entities in the world. And perhaps they were once. There are statues throughout Anorlando, and they are worth pausing to observe. Carvings of Gwyn himself appear in prominent locations. A tall, regal figure with flowing hair and an aura of command. There are statues of Guinevere, his eldest daughter, depicted as a figure of abundance and grace. And in the great hall where the most significant battle of the city will take place, there are alcoves for 3 statues. 2 remain, one of Gwyn and one of Guinevere. The 3rd alcove is empty. It is widely understood that this space once held a representation of Gwyn's firstborn son, a god of war who inherited the sunlight of his father and was once heir to Anorlando's throne. But this son committed an act of such betrayal, siding with the ancient dragons his father had defeated, that his deific status was revoked and his name was stricken from the annals of history. Every record of him was destroyed. His statues were torn down. His miracles were stripped of attribution. By the time you walk through Anorlando, he is nameless, and the empty alcove where his likeness once stood is a wound in the architecture, a deliberate absence that says as much as any monument. This is how the gods of Anorlando dealt with shame. They did not confront it. They erased it. The city does not acknowledge its failures. It simply removes them from view and trusts that in time, no one will remember they were ever there. There is also, in a smaller but no less ornate building adjacent to the cathedral, a statue of a woman holding a child. The identity of these figures is debated, but their presence near the entrance to one of Anorlando's strangest secrets lends them a quiet gravity. For beside this statue, on the building's lower floor, hangs a painting of immense size, and within it lies an entire world. But that is a matter for later. For now, it is enough to stand in the golden light and look at the architecture and understand that this city was built to make a statement. It says, "We are eternal. We are divine. We are beyond your comprehension, and we are generous enough to let you glimpse what divinity looks like." Every stone, every spire, every buttress is an argument for the legitimacy of the gods. The city does not explain, it asserts, and for a long time, by every available account, that assertion went unchallenged. The Silver Knights of Anorlando are the most persistent presence in the city. They are everywhere, patrolling the walkways, guarding the buttresses, standing sentinel in the corridors of the keep. Their armor gleams, their weapons are precise, and they fight with a disciplined aggression that speaks of long training and unwavering purpose. Once, they were the army of Lord Gwyn himself, Their equipment descriptions tell us that when Lord Gwyn departed to link the fire, his knights split into two groups. The Black Knights followed their lord to the kiln of the first flame, where the act of linking the fire burned them to ash, reducing them to charred, wandering spirits that haunt the corners of Lordran to this day. The Silver Knights, by contrast, remained behind in the Forsaken capital, in the service of their goddess, the Princess of Sunlight. This is, on its face, a straightforward division. The loyal followed Gwyn to his sacrifice, and the rest stayed to guard his daughter. But the detail that complicates this picture is the word Forsaken. Even the item descriptions acknowledge that the capital was abandoned. The Silver Knight armor does not describe a thriving city. It describes a forsaken one. The knights who stayed behind were not guarding a living kingdom. They were guarding what was left of one. And yet they remained dutiful, precise, lethal, patrolling corridors that no god would walk again, defending a throne that sat empty. The Silver Knight shield, in particular, offers a detail that deepens this picture considerably. It states that the Silver Knights stayed behind in Anor Londo to defend the illusory goddess, and their shields are blessed with her divine protection. This description tells us two things. First, that the goddess these knights served was not real. Second, that they served her anyway and were blessed for it. Whether the Silver Knights knew they were defending an illusion is one of the great unanswered questions of Anor Londo's history. Their discipline suggests either absolute loyalty to a cause they understood and accepted, or absolute devotion to a lie they could not see through. Either interpretation is haunting. These are soldiers who have stood their post for what might be centuries, in a city that was abandoned by every god except the one hiding in the basement. They fight with lethal precision. The archers who guard the buttress leading to the keep side entrance are infamous, perched at the end of a narrow walkway with enormous greatbows. Their dragon slayer arrows, capable of knocking even the most heavily armored warrior from the ledge. It is, by design, one of the most punishing gauntlets in the entire journey, a point where the architecture and the Guardians work in concert to make progress feel genuinely impossible. And yet, it is not a defense against any real threat. There is no invading army approaching Anor Londo. There are no enemies at the gates. There is only you, the chosen undead, following the path that was laid out for you. And the Silver Knights are testing you, just as the fortress tested you, just as the golem tested you. They are not defending the city from danger. They are ensuring that whoever reaches the cathedral is strong enough to be useful. The path through Anor Londo is not a battle. It is a selection process. Within the chapel adjacent to the main cathedral, a different kind of guardian keeps watch. The painting guardians are alabaster-robed figures who wield curved swords in a continuous, circular dancing motion, a technique passed down through generations according to their equipment's description. They are quick, agile, and aggressive in groups, and they guard the lower floor of the chapel with a devotion that is, in its own way, deeply strange. For what they guard is a painting, and the description of their armor tells us something remarkable. They have guarded the great painting of Ariamis for ages, passing their duty down through generations. But the reason for doing so passed from all memory long ago. They do not know why they guard the painting. They simply do, because they always have, because their predecessors did, because the act of guarding has become its own justification. This is a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the nature of Anor Londo and the culture that the gods cultivated. Duty outlasts understanding. obedience outlasts reason. The painting guardians are a microcosm of the entire city, performing a function whose original purpose has been forgotten, maintaining a vigil over something they cannot explain, because the structure of their lives was built around the act of service, and the service itself became indistinguishable from identity. They are not unique in this. The Silver Knights, too, serve a goddess who does not exist in a capital that was forsaken by the gods they swore to protect. The Batwing demons ferry travelers to a city that no longer needs them. The Sentinels stand at doors that no god will ever walk through again. Anor Londo is a city of servants whose masters have gone, performing rituals whose meanings have evaporated, and not one of them has stopped. The painting they guard is enormous, covering most of a wall in the chapel's lower floor, and it is, in a sense, the most honest thing in all of Anor Londo. For within it lies the truth of what the gods did with the things they feared. The painted world of Ariamis was created, as its name implies, by someone or something called Ariamis, and it exists as a nested world within the canvas, a pocket reality accessible only to those who carry a specific artifact, the peculiar doll, a small and pitiful item whose description speaks of a young girl in an undead asylum who clutched it tightly and was eventually drawn into a cold and lonely painted world. The world within the painting is a frozen township on a mountaintop, bleak and snow-covered, populated by things the gods wanted removed from their sight. Hollows, crow demons, wheel skeletons, engorged creatures that inflict toxic corruption. And at its heart, in a tower overlooking a precipice, a being named Crossbreed Priscilla, half dragon and half something else, who towers over a human visitor and wields a scythe capable of cutting life itself. She is gentle. She does not attack unless attacked. She asks only that you leave, offering to show you the way out of the world she calls her own. She was placed there by the gods of Anor Londo because she was feared by them. Her body is naturally imbued with occult power, a force capable of harming gods, and this alone was enough to warrant her banishment to a world within a painting, hidden away behind generations of guardians who would eventually forget what they were guarding or why. The painted world served Anor Londo as a prison for the unwanted. Dangerous artifacts were sealed inside it. Followers of Velka, the goddess of sin, a rogue deity whose influence made the gods uncomfortable, found refuge within its borders. Occult weapons, the very tools that could kill divine beings, were stashed in its corners, kept out of reach of anyone who might use them against the order that Gwyn had established. It is remarkable when you consider it that this prison exists within the heart of Anor Londo itself, mere steps from the cathedral where the gods held court. The city does not merely hide its secrets, it keeps them close, folded inside itself like a letter sealed with wax, always nearby but never acknowledged. The things the gods feared most were not banished to some distant wasteland. They were stored in a chapel, in a painting, guarded by servants who had forgotten the nature of their charge. This is a city that contains within its own walls the means of its undoing, and it has structured its entire culture around ensuring that no one ever thinks to look. The existence of the painted world also tells us something about the nature of divine power in this age. Whatever force allowed Ariamis to create a nested world required access to the first flame and the dark soul as pigments, according to the lore established in later entries. This means that the gods either commissioned this work or permitted it, trusting Ariamis with primordial forces in order to build a cage for what they could not destroy. They could not kill Priscilla, or chose not to. They could not eliminate the occult, or found it easier to hide. And so they painted a world, and they put the unwanted things inside it, and they posted guards, and they moved on. The city above the painting continued to gleam. The buttresses continued to soar. The golden light continued to fall. And beneath the feet of every god who walked through that chapel, a frozen world held everything they were afraid of, sealed behind canvas and silence. When you have passed through the city's outer defenses and navigated the cathedral's side entrance, when you have dealt with the silver knights in the keep's corridors and found the great doors that open into the main hall, you will face the final barrier before the audience you have been promised. They are waiting for you in a long pillared hall, enormous and echoing, and they are two of the most formidable warriors in all of Lordran. Dragonslayer Ornstein and Executioner Smau stand together in this cathedral, and their presence here is the last trial, the ultimate test to determine whether you are worthy of what lies beyond. Ornstein is the captain of Gwyn's 4 Knights, a title of immense prestige in the hierarchy of the old gods. His armor is golden. His spear is long and crackling with lightning, modeled after the weapon of Gwyn's firstborn, the god of war whose name was stricken from history. Ornstein was a dragon slayer, as his title declares, and his original purpose was to hunt the ancient enemies of the gods. He served alongside Artorias the Abyss Walker, Lord's Blade Siren, and Hawkeye Goff. And of the 4, it is Ornstein who was left here, in the Forsaken Capital, guarding the path to a goddess who had already departed. Beside him is Smo, a figure of enormous size and deeply unsettling reputation. Smau was the executioner of the royal family of Anorlando, a duty he performed with such relish that he began to consume the bones of those he killed. This act was regarded as distasteful by his masters, and despite his apparently genuine desire to be anointed a knight of Gwyn, the royal family never granted him that honor. His equipment descriptions paint a picture of someone powerful, loyal, and utterly repellent to the aristocracy he served. He wanted to belong. He was denied, and yet he stayed. After the gods left Anorlando, Smau remained in defense of the cathedral, defending Guinevere or whatever semblance of her still resided there. Whether Smo understood that the goddess was an illusion is not recorded. Whether Ornstein did is equally unclear, though subsequent lore from later entries suggests that Ornstein eventually left Anorlando entirely, abandoning his post to seek the nameless king, the very god of war he had once served. His armor was later found at Archdragon Peak, empty, with no body nearby, suggesting that Ornstein survived his journey but shed his identity upon arrival. If this is so, then the Ornstein you face in the cathedral may not have been the true knight at all. There is evidence, debated within the community but supported by certain item descriptions, that the Ornstein encountered in Anorlando could have been another of Gwendolyn's illusions, or at the very least, that the real Ornstein had departed long before you arrived. In the 3rd entry of the series, Smo is referenced as the last knight in defense of the last cathedral of Anorlando, a phrasing that implies he was alone by the end. This is speculative territory, and the lore does not offer a definitive answer, but the possibility adds a layer of melancholy to the encounter. If Ornstein was never truly there, then Smau spent his final ages defending a lie alongside a phantom of his only companion, denied even the consolation of genuine fellowship in his long, thankless vigil. What is certain is the function these two serve within the narrative of the city. They are the last gatekeepers, the final proof that you are strong enough to do what the gods need you to do. They are not defending Guinevere from harm. They are filtering the unworthy from the worthy. The entire structure of the journey, from the bells to the fortress, to the golem, to the city itself, is a funnel designed to produce a single result, a being powerful enough to succeed Gwyn and link the first flame. Ornstein and Smuff are the narrowest point of that funnel, and they will kill you repeatedly if necessary, until you prove that you are what the system requires. There is a custom associated with this battle that is referenced in later entries. When one of the two falls, the survivor absorbs the essence of the defeated, growing in size and power, their health restored, their attacks augmented with new properties. This absorption is described in the lore of the storm-curved sword as having been a custom of the culture of Anorlando in the Age of Fire. The Nameless King performs a similar act when his mount falls in battle, absorbing its power to continue fighting. It is a tradition of the gods, this claiming of a fallen ally's strength, and it transforms what could be a moment of mourning into a moment of escalation. There is no grief in the cathedral when one of these warriors falls. There is only the continuation of purpose, the assumption of power, the refusal to stop until the trial is complete. This is the ethos of Anorlando distilled into a single act. Loss does not diminish. It is consumed. It is repurposed. It is folded into the machine of order and made to serve. After the trial, after you have spent what feels like hours learning the rhythms of two warriors who have held their post since before memory, after you have watched one fall and the other grow terrible with borrowed power, after you have finally brought the last of them down, you climb a staircase and open a door. And on the other side of that door, you find comfort. Guinevere, the Princess of Sunlight, sits before you in a chamber of warm golden light. And she is immense, and she is beautiful, and she is the first being in this entire journey who looks at you with something resembling kindness. She speaks to you, and her voice is gentle, and she tells you that you are chosen, that you are the successor to Lord Gwyn, that you have been granted the Lord Vessel, and that your purpose now is to seek the great souls of the lords and bring them to the altar so that the path to the kiln of the first flame may be opened, so that you may link the fire and prolong the age of light. She offers you a covenant, the Princess Guard, a bond that allows those who pledge to it to heal one another, to cooperate, to support each other in the trials ahead. It is a system of mutual aid wrapped in the language of divine mandate. She asks nothing unreasonable. She grants you the most powerful tool you have yet received. She sends you on your way with a blessing and a purpose. And for a moment, perhaps a long moment, you believe her. This is what Anorlando was built to produce. Not the battle, not the trial. This feeling, this warmth, this sense of purpose, of being chosen, of standing in the presence of something greater than yourself, and being told that your suffering has meaning. The golden light that bathes the city, the monumental architecture, the gauntlet of guardians and tests, all of it exists to create the conditions under which this moment can land with maximum emotional force. You have been broken down by the world. You have been tested beyond reason. And now, at last, someone is telling you that it was all for something, that there is a reason you endured, that the pain was a purification, and the reward is purpose. The Lord Vessel is placed in your hands, and you are given the ability to travel between bonfires, to move through the world with a freedom you have never before possessed. And you feel, truly feel, that you have achieved something, that you have arrived, that the Golden City was everything it appeared to be. But the city is a lie. Every stone of it is true, but the light that falls upon those stones is false. The warmth you feel is manufactured. The goddess who spoke to you does not exist. Guinevere left Anorlando long ago, along with many other deities, and later became the wife of flame god Flan. According to the Ring of the Sun Princess, the figure you knelt before, the immense radiant woman who placed the Lord vessel in your hands and told you your purpose, is an illusion projected by a god who hides in the tomb beneath the city. A god so ashamed of his own appearance that he could not bear to show his face, and so he showed you his sisters instead. The sunlight that bathes Anorlando is not sunlight. It is sorcery. The warmth is a conjuration. The beauty is a veil draped over an empty, cold, forsaken capital, and it has been hanging there for longer than anyone alive can remember. And here is the cruelest part. It works. It works because you need it to. After everything you have been through, the horror and the hollowing and the relentless, grinding hostility of a world that offers nothing but death and repetition, you arrive in Anorlando, and you are so grateful for the light, so desperate for something that looks like meaning, that you accept what you are given without question. The illusion does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be offered to someone who has nothing else. The Golden City is a mechanism of persuasion, and its target is not your body, but your hope. Gwyndolin is the last born of Lord Gwyn, and in many ways, the loneliest figure in all of Lordran. Born with a powerful affinity for the moon rather than the sun, he was raised as a daughter by his father, a decision rooted in the traditions and associations of the old gods, where the moon was regarded as feminine and the sun as masculine. This upbringing shaped everything about Gwyndolin, from the way he presented himself to the world to the way the world was allowed to see him. He is described in the lore as being all too aware of his repulsive, frail appearance, a self-assessment that carries the weight of a lifetime spent being treated as something to be hidden. When Gwyn departed Anorlando to link the first flame, his firstborn had already been exiled and erased. Guinevere, his eldest daughter, left the city along with many other deities. Filianora was sent to the Ringed City. The various lesser gods scattered to other lands, taking their servants and their secrets with them. One by one, the divine residents of Anorlando abandoned the capital, until only Gwyndolin remained. The Dark Moon Seance Ring makes this explicit. The Dark Sun Gwyndolin is the only remaining deity in Anorlando. His followers are few, but their tasks are of vital importance. What were those tasks? The most significant was the maintenance of the illusion. Gwyndolin created the image of Guinevere, the sunlight that bathed the city, and the semblance of a functioning divine court, all from his hidden chamber beneath the rotating staircase in the honorary tomb of his father. The Dark Moonblade Covenant Ring tells us that Gwyndolin, all too aware of his repulsive, frail appearance, created the illusion of a sister Guinevere who helps him guard over Anorlando. And then, with a gravity that resonates through the entire city, it adds, an unmasking of these deities would be tantamount to blasphemy. This is a warning dressed as doctrine. To see through the illusion is not merely to discover a truth, it is to commit a sin. The system that Gwyndolin has built is one where belief is not optional, but mandatory, where the act of questioning what you see is itself a transgression against the divine order. This is not an accident of phrasing. It is the foundational principle of the entire charade. The golden city, the radiant goddess, the purpose you have been given. All of it depends on your willingness to accept what you are shown. And the system has been designed to punish those who refuse. The blades of the dark moon, Gwendolyn's personal covenant, exist to hunt sinners, those who have transgressed against the gods or their covenants. Their purpose is enforcement. They are the consequence for disbelief. If you choose to strike Guinevere, you learn immediately how thin the veil truly was. A single blow from any weapon is enough to dispel her. She flinches, cries out in a dying animation, and vanishes. Because she was never there. She had no health to speak of. No resistance. She was light and sound, and the projection of a grieving brother's desperate need to maintain the illusion that his family's legacy still meant something. And when she vanishes, so does everything else. The golden light dims. The perpetual sunset gives way to a cold twilight, a deep blue-gray darkness that reveals Anne Orlando as it truly is. Empty, cold, and forsaken. The royal sentinels disappear. The bat-winged demons vanish. The gargoyles, if any remain, are gone. Nearly every non-player character in the city simply ceases to exist because they were illusions too, or at the very least, their presence was sustained by the enchantment that Gwendolyn had woven over the entire city. What remains is real, and what remains is telling. The Silver Knights stay. The Painting Guardians stay. The giant blacksmith in his workshop stays. These are the things that were never part of the illusion. These are the genuinely loyal, the genuinely committed, the beings who were in Anne Orlando. Not because a conjuration placed them there, but because they had nowhere else to go. The Silver Knights continue to patrol. The Painting Guardians continue to dance their deadly vigil. The blacksmith continues to work at his anvil, hammering away in a city that has just been revealed as a hollow shell. In the darkened corridors, two new hostile figures appear. Dark Moon soldiers wielding swords and greatswords, dispatched by Gwendolyn as punishment for your transgression. And the Dark Moon Knights, the firekeeper who maintained the first bonfire you encountered in Anne Orlando, relocates to a position near the rotating staircase. Hostile now, her rapier drawn, her dark moon blade miracle coating her weapon in the power of the dark moon. She curses you for what you have done, and she means it, because for her, the illusion was not something she saw through. It was something she believed in. Her faith was genuine, even if its object was not. And your act of violence against the image of the goddess is, to her, an act of desecration. This is the tragedy at the heart of Anne Orlando. The illusion was not maintained for the sake of the gods, who had already left. It was maintained for the sake of the believers, the knights and firekeepers and covenant members who needed it to be true. Gwendolyn did not project Guinevere's image to deceive enemies or ward off invaders. He did it because the alternative was admitting that the gods had abandoned everything, that the Golden City was a mausoleum, that the Age of Fire was ending, and no amount of sunlight sorcery could change that. The illusion was an act of denial, and it was performed not by a confident deceiver, but by a lonely, frightened child of gods who did not know what else to do. Consider the crown of the dark sun, which Gwendolyn wears. Its description tells us that the image of the sun manifests Gwendolyn's deep adoration of the sun. He is the god of the dark moon, raised as a daughter, hidden from the world, left alone in an empty city to maintain a fiction he was never meant to carry. And the crown he chose to wear bears the image of the sun, the very symbol of his father's power, the thing he admired most and could never embody. Gwendolyn did not want to be the god of the dark moon. He did not want to lurk in his father's tomb, projecting images of a family that had left him behind. He wanted to be what his father was. He wanted the sunlight, the authority, the love. And because he could not have any of it, he created an imitation and he sustained it for as long as he could. And he hid behind the image of a sister who was everything he was not: visible, beloved, radiant, present. The hallway where you fight Gwendolyn, if you choose to pursue him into his father's tomb, appears to stretch endlessly before you, an impossible corridor that goes on and on as Gwendolyn retreats, firing sorceries and moonlight arrows from the distant end. But this, too, is an illusion. The hallway is not infinite. It merely appears that way, because Gwendolyn's power is the power of deception, of making things seem larger or longer or more threatening than they truly are. His entire existence in Anor Londo has been one long act of making something appear greater than it is. The city is his masterwork in this regard. A shell of gold wrapped around nothing, sustained by the will of a single frail deity who could not bear to let it go. And if you kill him, if you strike down the god of the dark moon in his father's tomb, the illusion of Guinevere persists. The sunlight does not fade. The city remains golden. Even in death, Gwendolyn's enchantment holds, because the magic was never about his presence. It was about his absence. It was about filling the void left by everyone who left, and the void does not care whether its creator still lives. The enchantment only breaks when you strike the illusion directly, when you refuse to accept what you are being shown, when you commit the blasphemy of unmasking the deities. Only then does the light go out. Only then does the truth emerge, cold and complete. The golden city was always cold. The sunlight was always false. You were always alone in a forsaken capital, being manipulated by the last surviving member of a dead dynasty who needed you to link the fire because that was the only purpose left to give the city. And the city was the only thing left of his family, and without it, he was nothing. What does a city look like when it has been frozen outside of time? Not ruined, not decayed, not overgrown with moss or crumbling at the foundations, but simply stopped, held in a single eternal moment, like an insect preserved in amber. That is Anor Londo, whether you see it in its golden light or in its darkened truth. The city does not change. It does not grow. It does not age. The same silver knights patrol the same corridors. The same staircase rotates on the same mechanism. The same sun hangs at the same angle in the same sky, never rising, never setting, perpetually suspended in the last moment before night. There are no civilians in Anor Londo. There are no shops, no homes with fires burning, no children, no signs of ordinary life. There are guardians, and there are mechanisms, and there is the cathedral, and there is the audience chamber. And that is all. This is not a city. It is a stage. It is a set designed for a single performance. The arrival of the chosen undead, the granting of the Lord vessel, the dispatch of a willing sacrifice to the kiln of the first flame. Every element of Anor Londo serves this purpose. The beautiful approach through the fortress and over the walls is designed to make the arrival feel earned. The golden light is designed to make the city feel sacred. The guardians are designed to test strength. The goddess is designed to inspire devotion. The Lord vessel is designed to grant purpose. And the entire apparatus, from the first bell to the last bonfire, is designed to produce one outcome. Someone strong enough and motivated enough to throw themselves into the fire that Gwyn kindled with his own body, to burn as he burned, to prolong an age that was always, always ending. The city is a machine built to produce kindling. That is its function. That is why it exists. That is why the architecture is so imposing. Why the light is so warm. Why the goddess is so beautiful. Why the purpose is so clear. Because the machine needs you to believe. And belief requires beauty. And beauty requires an audience. And the audience is you, the hollow, the undead, the thing that crawled out of an asylum cell with no memory and no hope, and was told, again and again, at every stage of the journey, that meaning could be found at the end of the road. The meaning was always the fire. The purpose was always the sacrifice. The golden city was always the bait. And it is perhaps the most effective trap in all of Lordran, because it does not look like a trap. It looks like a reward. It looks like salvation. It looks, for one shining moment, like the end of suffering, and that is precisely why it works. There is a deeper cruelty in the stasis of Anarlondo, one that extends beyond the manipulation of individual undead. The city has been in this state for a very long time. The crestfallen merchant at Sen's fortress speaks of a century of failed attempts to reach this place, and the centuries before that are largely unrecorded. The Silver Knights have been at their posts for ages. The painting guardians have passed their duty down through generations. The giant blacksmith has been at his anvil for longer than any of them can remember. A friend of Hawkeye Gao, one of Gwyn's 4 knights, which places his tenure in Anarlondo all the way back to the age of the gods themselves. None of these beings have anywhere else to go. The city is their world. The routine is their existence. The patrol, the vigil, the hammer on the anvil, the dance of the curved swords before the painting. These are not choices. They are grooves worn into existence by the passage of time, patterns so deep that they have become the only shapes these lives can take. And the stasis is not maintained by any natural law. It is maintained by the illusion, by the golden light, by the presence of the false goddess, and the perpetual sunset, and the whole elaborate fiction that things are as they should be. The enchantment does not merely deceive visitors, it sustains the inhabitants. It gives the Silver Knights a goddess to serve. It gives the firekeeper a flame to tend. It gives the blacksmith customers who need weapons to defeat the guardians who need to be defeated, so that the visitor can reach the goddess who needs to be met, so that the Lord vessel can be given, so that the fire can be linked, so that the age can continue, so that the city can persist, so that the Silver Knights can keep serving, so that the firekeeper can keep tending, so that the blacksmith can keep hammering. It is a closed loop, a system that exists to perpetuate itself, and at its center, in his father's tomb, Gwendolyn tends the mechanism, alone in the dark, wearing a crown shaped like the sun he will never be. Gwyn himself is gone. He left Anarlondo and descended to the kiln of the first flame with half his knights, who were burned to ash, and became the Black Knights, hollow wandering spirits charred by the flame they helped their lord kindle. Gwyn offered his own soul to the fire, and it consumed him. But it did not kill him. Not entirely. He became the Lord of Cinder, a thing that was once a god, still moving, still fighting, still guarding the flame with the remnant of a body that has been burning for longer than history remembers. He left behind a city and a legacy and a series of mechanisms designed to ensure that someone would follow him into the flame when it began to fade again. Because it would fade. It always fades. The first flame is not eternal. It was never eternal. It was born in the darkness between the arch trees, and it will return to darkness eventually. And everything that Gwyn built, every stone of Anor, every beam of golden light, every silver knight and every painting guardian, and every rotating staircase, all of it exists in defiance of an inevitability that Gwyn himself could not accept. The city is not a monument to divine power. It is a monument to divine fear. Gwyn trembled at the dark. According to the lore that surrounds his linking of the flame, he was afraid of what would happen when the fire died, afraid of the humans who carried fragments of the dark soul, afraid of the Dark Lord who would one day be born among them. And so, he kindled the flame, and he built a system to ensure that others would kindle it after him. And at the heart of that system, he placed a golden city full of false light and a false goddess and a very real Lord Vessel, because he needed the undead to believe in something strongly enough to burn for it. The city is beautiful because it has to be. The goddess is kind because she has to be. The light is golden because it has to be. None of it is real, but all of it is necessary, because without it, the undead might ask why. And that is the one question the system cannot afford to answer. It is worth lingering on the Lord Vessel itself, because it is the single object around which the entire elaborate machinery of Anor revolves. This great stone bowl, described in its own entry as an object of extraordinary power capable of allowing its bearer to warp between kindled bonfires, is the gift that Guinevere, or rather her projection, offers you after you have proven yourself in the cathedral. It is placed in your hands with solemn words about succession and purpose. And it does exactly what it promises. It gives you mobility. It gives you access. It gives you the ability to traverse the world with a speed and efficiency that was previously impossible. And it opens the way to the 4 great souls you must collect before the kiln of the first flame can be unsealed. But the Lord Vessel is also a key, and the door it opens leads to a pyre. You carry it to Firelink Altar, a hidden chamber beneath Firelink Shrine, and you place it upon a pedestal, and it awaits the great souls that you will feed it, one by one, as you plunder them from the holders who guard them. Once all 4 are placed, the kiln opens, and within it, at the end of a long corridor of ash and silence, you will find Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, and you will face him, and you will either link the fire or let it die. The Lord Vessel does not care which choice you make. Its function is simply to bring you to the threshold. It is a tool, and like every tool in Anor, it was designed to produce a specific result. The gift of the Lord Vessel feels generous, even miraculous, when it is given. But when you understand what it is, what it truly is, the generosity curdles. You have been handed a ticket, and the destination is the fire. Everything that preceded this moment, the trials, the fortress, the golem, the city, the goddess, the light, all of it was the mechanism by which the ticket was placed into your hands. You were not chosen because you are special. You were chosen because you survived, and survival was the only criterion that mattered. Because the fire does not need a hero. It needs fuel. King Seeker Frampt, the primordial serpent who guides you toward this fate, is explicit in his instructions. He tells you that your fate is to succeed the great Lord Gwyn, to link the fire, cast away the dark, and undo the curse of the undead. He says this as though it is an honor, as though succession is something to aspire to. But Gwyn did not step gracefully aside. He burned. He is still burning, a hollowed remnant in a chamber of ash, swinging a great sword with the empty mechanical persistence of a thing that has long since ceased to think or feel or want. That is what succession looks like. That is the fate that Anor Londo's golden light was designed to make you accept. And there is another serpent, one you may never meet if you follow the prescribed path. Darkstalker Cathay, who lurks in the abyss beneath New Londo ruins, offers a different perspective. He tells you that the Age of Fire was never meant to last, that Gwyn's linking of the flame was an act of desperation, that the natural order of the world is one of darkness, and that the chosen undead's true purpose is not to link the fire, but to let it die and usher in the Age of Dark. Whether Catha is trustworthy is a question the Lord deliberately leaves unresolved, and this narration will not pretend to settle it. But his existence and the alternative he represents throws the entire structure of Anor Londo into sharp relief. If Catha is right, if the Age of Fire is an aberration, and the Age of Dark is the natural state of the world, then everything about the Golden City, every buttress, every night, every beam of false sunlight, is not merely a deception, but a perversion, a colossal effort to sustain something that should have ended long ago. And even if Catha is wrong, even if linking the fire is genuinely the right thing to do, the methods by which the system achieves this end are deeply troubling. You are not told the truth. You are not given a choice. You are shown beauty, offered purpose, handed a tool, and pointed toward the fire. And at no point does anyone in Anor Londo, not the goddess, not Frampt, not the Silver Knights, ever tell you what linking the fire actually entails. You learn by doing, and by then, it is too late. The Golden City does not inform, it persuades. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a guide and a trap. Beyond the mechanisms of narrative and purpose, Anor Londo speaks to something about the nature of power itself and how it perpetuates beyond the conditions of its origin. Gwyn was powerful because of the Lord's soul he claimed from the first flame. The flame gave him lightning. The lightning gave him victory over the dragons. The victory gave him dominion. The dominion gave him a city, and the city gave him a legacy. But the flame faded. The lightning dimmed. The victory grew distant. The dominion loosened. And the city, built to embody a power that no longer existed in its original form, had to find another way to sustain itself. The answer was the illusion, not Gwendolyn's illusion specifically, but the broader illusion of continuity. The fiction that nothing had changed, that the gods were still in residence, that the Age of Fire still burned bright, that the order established at the dawn of the age still held. The Silver Knights patrolling their corridors were part of this illusion. The sentinels at the doors were part of it. The great cathedral, with its dragon trophies and its towering statues, was part of it. Every element of the city contributed to the impression that the divine order was intact, even as the substance of that order had drained away. This is not unique to the gods of Anor Londo. It is a pattern observable in many histories, both real and imagined. Power, once established, creates institutions and structures that persist long after the conditions that gave rise to that power have changed. The architecture remains, even when the builders are gone. The rituals continue even when their meanings are forgotten. The guards stand at their posts even when there is nothing left to guard. What Anor Londo demonstrates with a clarity that borders on the cruel. Is that the appearance of power can substitute for its reality? That a city can function as a seat of authority even when it is occupied by nothing but ghosts and projections, provided that those who encounter it are willing to believe in what they see. And the system is designed at every level to ensure that belief. The fortress weeds out the weak. The gauntlet weeds out the hesitant. The goddess rewards the faithful. The Lord vessel empowers the chosen. And the blades of the dark moon punish the doubtful. Every contingency is accounted for. Every possible source of disruption has been anticipated and neutralized. It is a system of control so comprehensive that it does not even need to be conscious. It runs on momentum, on tradition, on the accumulated weight of centuries of unquestioned authority. The Silver Knights do not need to understand the system to participate in it. They simply need to fight, and they do, because fighting is what they have always done, and the idea of not fighting has never occurred to them, because the golden light tells them that everything is as it should be, and they have no reason, no capacity, no framework for doubt. This is what the illusion sustains. Not power, but the impression of power. Not order, but the impression of meaning. And for as long as the impression holds, the system works. The fire gets linked. The age gets prolonged. The city endures. And nobody asks whether any of it is real, because the asking itself has been defined as blasphemy, and the punishment for blasphemy is swift and decisive, and the golden light is so warm, and the goddess is so kind, and the Lord vessel feels so heavy and significant in your hands, and the alternative is the cold and the dark and the knowledge that you are alone in a dead city being manipulated by a god who is too ashamed to show his face. Who would choose that? Who, having crawled through the muck and filth and death of Lordran, would choose to see the truth when the lie is so much more bearable? This is the genius of Anarlando, and it is the genius of the lore that surrounds it. The city does not force compliance. It does not threaten or coerce, not directly. It simply offers you what you need at the exact moment when you need it most, and trusts that your own desperation will do the rest. The Golden City is an illusion sustained not by the power of its creator, but by the need of its visitor. It exists because you are looking at it, because you want it to be real, because the alternative is unbearable. And in that sense, the illusion is not Gwendolyn's achievement. It is yours. You built the Golden City in your own mind, out of your own need, and the light was always your own hope reflected back at you. And when you struck the goddess and the light went out, what you lost was not her. It was the part of yourself that believed things could be beautiful and warm and true. That is the wound Anarlando inflicts, not the arrows of the Silver Knights, not the hammers and spears of Ornstein and Smo, not the trek across buttresses high above the ground. The wound is the knowledge, should you choose to seek it, that the most beautiful place in the world was the most empty, and the kindest face you ever saw was the face of nothing at all. But the Golden City endures, in a manner of speaking. Ages pass, the fire is linked, or it is not, and then it fades again, and it is linked again. Or it is not, and the world turns, and time, which is convoluted in this place, bends and folds and converges, and Anarlando remains. Not as it was, not in its golden splendor, but it remains, because the cathedral at its heart is stone, and stone endures. In the age chronicled by the third entry of this history, the city of Irothel of the Boreal Valley rises around the old cathedral. This is Gwendolyn's work, or at least the product of his long stewardship. After the events of the First Age, after whatever outcome the chosen undead delivered, Gwendolyn apparently survived or was restored. And he built Irithyll, a city of cold, moonlit beauty, an entire settlement for the descendants of the gods, nestled in a frozen valley with the old cathedral of Anorlando at its heart. Where once there was golden sunlight, there is now silvery moonlight, and the eternal sunset has been replaced by an eternal night, and the warmth has been replaced by snow and frost, and the pale blue glow of a boreal sky. It is still beautiful, but it is a different kind of beauty. The pretense of sunlight has been abandoned. Gwendolyn, it seems, finally stopped pretending to be what his father was, and embraced what he himself had always been, the god of the dark moon, the keeper of a cold and quiet authority. He rose to become the chief deity, the head of the Way of White, the faith that had once venerated his father and now venerated him, or at least the institution he represented. Statues of Guinevere still stood throughout Irithyll, honoring the goddess who had, at some point, returned to her old home before departing again, this time for the kingdom of Lothric, where she would become queen. The Silver Knights, faithful as always, continued their patrols. The old cathedral was maintained, and for a time, however long a time it was, Irithyll functioned as a living city, a successor to the golden capital it was built upon, less grand perhaps, less radiant, but real in a way that Anorlando had not been for a very long age. Then came Sullivan, born in the painted world of Ariamis, the very prison that the gods of Anorlando had created to contain the things they feared. Pontiff Sullivan emerged from the painting and discovered the profaned flame in the ancient capital beneath Irithyll. This undying flame granted him ambition and power in equal measure, and he turned his sights upon the Boreal Valley. Sullivan rose through the ranks of the Way of White's clergy, gaining influence and authority, until the moment came when Gwendolyn was stricken by illness. The nature of this illness is not detailed in the lore, and some have speculated that Sullivan himself may have had a hand in it, though this remains unconfirmed. What is confirmed is that Sullivan exploited the situation without hesitation. He proclaimed himself pontiff, the legitimate representative of the god, and took effective control of Irithyll and its institutions. To prevent resistance, he imprisoned Gwendolyn in the abandoned cathedral of Anorlando and imprisoned Gwendolyn's sister, Yorshka, in a tower above her church, creating a stalemate in which neither the Silver Knights nor the Blades of the Dark Moon could act, afraid of seeing their captive leaders executed. The servants, faithful to the end, were paralyzed. Sullivan transformed Irithyll into a place of cruelty. He sent politically inconvenient subjects away as outrider knights, forcing them to wear rings that would eventually drive them mad and transform them into feral beasts. He enslaved portions of the populace. He experimented upon prisoners in the Irithyll dungeon, creating wretched, malformed things locked in cells beneath the city. The beautiful moonlit streets of Irithyll were patrolled by his knights and his sorcerers, and beneath the surface of civility, the city had become a cage. Then Aldrich arrived. Aldrich, devourer of gods, had once been a human cleric of the Cathedral of the Deep, but his practice of consuming human flesh had transformed him into something formless and enormous, an amorphous entity of insatiable hunger. When the Lords of Cinder were raised from their graves to link the fire once more, Aldrich refused, choosing instead to pursue a vision of an age of the deep sea, an age that would arrive when the gods themselves had been consumed. He gathered an army of deacons and marched on Irithyll, intent on devouring Gwyndolin, the last true god of Anor Londo. Sullivan resisted initially, but his forces were defeated, and in the aftermath, a pragmatic arrangement was reached. Aldrich was granted access to the cathedral and the imprisoned god within it, and Sullivan retained control of Irithyll, though his position was weakened. And so Aldrich came to the old cathedral of Anor Londo, to the very hall where Ornstein and Smaug had once stood guard, and there he found Gwyndolin, weakened by illness and captivity, and he began to devour him. When you arrive in Anor Londo in this later age, what you find is a place transformed by loss upon loss upon loss. The approach is different. You come not over the walls carried by demons, but through the frozen streets of Irithyll, past the Cathedral of Sullivan, through battles with his knights and his beasts. You climb the familiar stairs to the old cathedral, and the Silver Knights are still there, still patrolling, still fighting, their armor unchanged, their discipline unchanged. They serve the gods. They have always served the gods. They will serve the gods until there is nothing left of them to serve with. The city around them has darkened. The golden light is gone, not merely dimmed, as it was in dark Anor Londo, but simply absent, replaced by the cold of the Boreal Valley, the pale moonlight that Gwyndolin once chose, and that is now fading too, as Gwyndolin himself is consumed. The section of the city you once explored, the outer areas with their buttresses and towers and chapels, is largely inaccessible, blocked by collapsed debris and the accumulated ruin of ages. What remains is the cathedral itself, the great staircase, and the approaches to it. Everything else has been walled off by time and decay. In the workshop, where the giant blacksmith once worked, where he hammered weapons from boss souls and sold twinkling titanite with the unhurried patience of someone who had been doing the same thing for centuries. You find a body. He is slumped over his anvil, dead, and in his enormous hand he still holds the giant's coal, the fuel of his craft. His death is not explained. There is no dramatic lore entry, no item description that chronicles his end. He is simply gone, and his anvil is cold, and the coal he held is useful to a blacksmith far away, if you care to take it. This is one of the most quietly devastating moments in the entire history of Anor Londo. The giant blacksmith was a friend of Hawkeye Guff, one of Gwyn's 4 knights. He had been in this city since the Age of the Gods. He had survived the departure of Gwyn, the exodus of the deities, the long centuries of Gwyndolин's illusion, the construction of Irithyll, the rise of Sullivan, the march of Aldrich. He had outlasted everything, and then, at some point, in the cold and the dark, he died, alone, at his anvil, still holding his coal, still doing the only thing he knew how to do. No one buried him. No one moved him. He is simply there where he fell, and the city went on without him, because the city was always going to go on without everyone. Because the city is stone, and stone does not mourn. The building that once housed the chapel with the great painting, the entrance to the painted world of Ariamus, has changed. Where it once stood, there is now a tower, and at its summit, accessible only by an invisible bridge that extends from the rotating staircase, you will find Company Captain Yorshka, Gwendolin's sister, still waiting in her prison, still leading the blades of the dark moon, still believing that her brother will come for her. She does not know that her brother is being eaten alive in the cathedral below. She does not know that the invisible bridge to her tower was likely prepared by Sullivan as a private path he could use to check on his prisoner, a path no one else would know about. She is isolated, uninformed, and faithful, because faith is all she has, and the structure of Anorlando's legacy, even in its final degradation, still depends on faith to function. If you climb the elevator that once led to Guinevere's chamber, you will find it still operational. The mechanism still works. The gears still turn. The platform still rises to the room at the top of the cathedral where the goddess once sat, enormous and radiant, offering the Lord vessel with a gentle voice. The room is empty now, decrepit, cold. There is no goddess. There is no light. There is only the Sun Princess ring, lying on the floor before the empty seat, left behind by Guinevere herself when she departed this place for the last time. It is a small golden band, and its warmth is faint, and its presence in this empty room is perhaps the most honest artifact in all of Anorlando, because it is the one thing that Guinevere actually left behind. Not an illusion, not a projection, not a memory. A ring placed deliberately before the seat she once occupied, as though she wanted someone, someday, to find it and know that she had been real. And in the hall below, where the pillars once provided cover from Ornstein's spear and Smo's hammer, where the cathedral echoed with the crash of lightning and the thunder of an executioner's swing, you find Aldrich. He occupies the same space, the same hall, the same arena, but the battle is utterly different. Aldrich fights with sorceries and miracles that are not his own. He wields a great bow that fires moonlight arrows. He casts spells that summon cascades of dark energy. And when you look at the upper portion of his formless, oozing body, you see why. Gwyndolin is still there. His torso, his arms, his face, still visible, still partially intact, jutting from the mass of Aldrich's body like a drowning figure half submerged in tar. He is being used. His magic, his miracles, his body, all of it, has been absorbed by the thing that is devouring him. And he fights you not because he chooses to, but because Aldrich wills it. The last god of Anorlando, the frail and lonely lastborn who built an entire golden illusion because he could not bear to admit that his family was gone, is being puppeted by a monster that eats gods in the very cathedral his father built, in the city that was supposed to be the seat of divine power for all of time. If there is a more complete and devastating image of the failure of the Age of Fire, it has not been recorded. Everything Gwyn feared has come to pass. The fire has faded. The darkness has crept in. The gods are gone, dead, devoured, or fled. The city that was built to house eternal order is a cold ruin occupied by a cannibal cleric and a dying god. And the Silver Knights, the last faithful, still patrol the stairs outside, still fighting anyone who approaches, still serving with the same discipline they have maintained since the beginning, because no one has told them to stop. And the concept of stopping is not one that their existence can accommodate. They are the final expression of Anorlando's central principle, that obedience, once begun, does not require a reason to continue. The routine is the reason. The service is the justification. The patrol is its own reward. And when the last silver knight falls, when the last arrow is fired, and the last sword stroke lands, there will be no one left to ask what it was all for. There is another secret the city harbors, one that speaks to the kind of beings the golden light attracts. Knight Lautrec of Karim, if he was freed from his cell in the Undead Parish and allowed to live, will make his way to Anorlando. He is a devotee of the goddess Fina, a deity of love and beauty, and his devotion manifests as an obsession with collecting the souls of firekeepers. He will murder the firekeeper of Firelink Shrine and steal her soul, extinguishing the bonfire that served as the journey's first anchor. And then he will flee to Anor, drawn to it as all devotees of beauty and light are drawn, as the system intends. He can be found here in spirit, confronted through the black eye orb, and when he falls, he drops the soul he stole and a ring of favor and protection, an artifact blessed by the goddess Fina herself. Lautrec is not a hero. He is not a villain in the simple sense. He is a zealot, and his presence in Anor underscores something vital about the city. It attracts those who hunger for the divine, whether that hunger is noble or predatory. The golden light does not discriminate. It draws the faithful and the fanatical alike, the selfless Solaire and the selfish Lautrec, and it uses them both because the system does not require goodness. It requires strength, and strength comes in many forms, and the fire does not care what kind of fuel it burns. There are travelers in this city whose presence speaks to the nature of the place more eloquently than any architecture. Solaire of Astora, that tireless seeker of the sun, can be found here. He has made his way through the same fortress, the same trials, and arrived in this golden city. And if you speak to him, you will find him as earnest and warm as he has been at every other meeting. He is here because he believes the sun exists. He is here because he has been chasing it since you first met him on the bridge overlooking the Undead Berg, where he stood staring at the sky and told you of his quest to find his very own sun. In Anor, he is closer to that sun than he has ever been, and the light that falls on his armor, that catches on his insignia of the Warriors of Sunlight, is the very light he has been searching for. And it is false. It is sorcery projected by a god who hides in darkness. Solaire does not know this, and there is something profoundly affecting about his presence here. This man of absolute faith, standing in a city of absolute deception, bathing in a light that does not exist, and being happy, he will offer to help you face Ornstein and Smaug, and his assistance is genuine, and his courage is real, and his sunlight is a lie, and none of these facts invalidate the others. Solaire embodies a question that Anor poses but never answers. Does it matter if the light is real, as long as the warmth it provides is felt? His faith is not diminished by the falseness of its object. His kindness is not corrupted by the manipulation of the system he serves. He is a good man in a deceitful world, and his goodness persists regardless of the deception. And perhaps that is the most subversive thing about him. The system needs believers, and Solaire is the most genuine believer of them all, and his belief sustains him in a way that the truth never could. And there is something in that observation that resists easy judgment. The Dark Moon Knightess, too, deserves attention. She is the firekeeper of the first bonfire you encounter upon arriving in Anor, and she is a member of Gwendolyn's Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant. Her presence at the bonfire is initially comforting, another sign that this place is welcoming, that there is warmth here, that someone is tending the flames that sustain you. She leans against the wall, silent, her face hidden behind a brass mask, and she does nothing threatening. She is simply there, a keeper of fire in a city of light. But if you break the illusion, if you strike Guinevere and the golden light dies, the Dark Moon Knightess transforms. She becomes hostile, relocating to a position near the rotating staircase, and she will attack you with her rapier and parrying dagger, her weapon coated with the Dark Moon Blade miracle. She is angry. She is grieving. She is defending the only thing she ever believed in, and you have just destroyed it. Her reaction is not the calculated response of a guardian fulfilling a protocol. It is the emotional eruption of a person whose world has just been shattered. The goddess she served is gone. The light she tended is extinguished. The covenant she pledged herself to has been violated by the very undead it was meant to guide. She fights you not because she has been ordered to, but because she has nothing left, and violence is the only expression her grief can find. And when she falls, if she falls, she drops a firekeeper soul, that most precious and terrible of items, the crystallized essence of a woman who spent her existence tending a flame in a city of false light, whose faith was real, even though its object was not, who died defending a lie, because the lie was the only thing she had ever loved. There is a cruelty in this that goes beyond the mechanics of combat. The Dark Moon Nidus is collateral damage. She was never a villain, never a deceiver, never a participant in the system's manipulation. She was a believer, placed at a bonfire in a golden city, given a flame to tend and a goddess to serve, and she did both with the quiet devotion that characterizes every firekeeper in this world. The system used her just as it used the Silver Knights, just as it used Ornstein and Smaug, just as it used you. The only difference is that when the truth came out, she was the one who could not bear it. The Silver Knights kept fighting. The painting guardians kept dancing. The blacksmith kept hammering. But the Dark Moon Nidus broke, because her relationship to the illusion was not one of duty, but of love. And love does not survive the loss of its object the way duty does. Siegmeyer of Katarina is here as well, encountered in a small courtyard, sitting among the enemies of the keep, unable to proceed and too proud to admit he is lost. His presence is a reminder that not everyone who reaches Anor Londo is a chosen hero on a destined path. Some are simply adventurers who got this far through stubbornness and luck, and for whom the Golden City is not a destination, but a waypoint in a journey that has no clear end. Siegmeyer is earnest, bumbling, desperately trying to maintain his dignity in a world that offers none, and his presence in Anor Londo humanizes the place in a way that the gods never did. He is here, and he is struggling, and his struggle is not part of the city's grand design. He is not being tested or filtered or manipulated. He is simply lost, and the Golden City, for all its architecture of purpose, has no purpose for him. He does not fit the narrative. He is not the chosen undead. He is just a man in onion-shaped armor, sitting in a courtyard, waiting for a solution he cannot find alone. And the city's magnificent indifference to his plight is one of the most human things about it. The city does not care about Siegmeyer. It does not care about Solaire. It does not care about the Dark Moon Nidus, or the Silver Knights, or the Painting Guardians. It does not care about you. It needs you, but it does not care about you, and there is a vast difference between the two. Need is mechanical. Care is personal. Anor Londo is incapable of the personal, because the personal was never part of its design. It was built to impress, to process, to persuade, to produce a specific outcome. And the inner lives of the beings who move through it are irrelevant to its function. The Silver Knight's loneliness does not matter. The Dark Moon Nidus's faith does not matter. Solaire's joy does not matter. Siegmeyer's confusion does not matter. What matters is the fire, and whether it gets linked, and everything else is background noise in a cathedral, built to amplify a single message. This indifference is perhaps the most godlike quality Anor Londo possesses. The gods of this world are not known for their compassion. Gwyn feared the dark and built a system to fight it. He did not build a system to comfort the people who would be consumed by that fight. The city reflects this perfectly. It is beautiful, and it is utterly without warmth. The light is warm, but the light is false. The stones are golden, but the stones are cold. The goddess is kind, but the goddess is empty. And beneath everything, beneath the gold and the light and the architecture and the purpose, there is only the silence, vast and permanent. The silence of a place that was built for someone who left and will never return. Let me note, before I move to close this account, what is unknown, what is left unresolved by the lore, what Anor Londo offers as mystery rather than answer. We do not know who Sen was, the figure whose name persists on the fortress, but whose identity has been erased as thoroughly as that of Gwyn's firstborn. We do not know why the bat-winged demons serve the gods, carrying travelers over walls that could just as easily have had gates. We do not know whether the Silver Knights are aware that they serve an illusion, or whether they have the capacity to care. We do not know what Gwyndolin experienced during the centuries he spent alone in his father's tomb, maintaining an enchantment over an empty city, receiving no visitors except those strong enough to kill his guardians and claim the vessel he was charged with protecting. We do not know whether the linking of the fire is truly necessary, or whether the Age of Dark would have been better, or whether the entire cycle is a mechanism without purpose beyond its own perpetuation. These unknowns are not gaps in the storytelling. They are the storytelling. Anor Londo works because it does not explain itself. It presents its beauty, its guardians, its goddess, its light, and it leaves you to decide what you think of all of it. The city does not argue for any particular interpretation. It simply exists, golden or dark, full or empty, true or false, and the meaning you find in it is the meaning you bring to it, which is perhaps the most honest thing a city built on deception has ever offered. There is a particular quality to the silence of Anor Londo that distinguishes it from the silence of other abandoned places in this world. The Undead Burg is quiet in the way that a battlefield is quiet after the fighting has moved elsewhere. The catacombs are silent in the way of a grave, heavy and close and smelling of old stone. The Ash Lake, that impossible cavern beneath the world, where the arch trees rise into an endless gray sky, is silent in the way of something that was never meant to be heard. A silence so vast, it becomes a sound of its own. But Anor Londo's silence is different. It is the silence of a performance that has ended, but whose stage has not been struck. The lights are still on. The set is still dressed. The props are still in position. The audience has gone home. The actors have departed. But no one has come to dismantle the production, and so it remains, frozen in the last moment before the curtain should have fallen, waiting for an applause that will never come. This is the silence of a place that expects to be witnessed. It is architectural silence, design silence, built into the very proportions of the space. The vast halls of the cathedral, the towering staircases, the enormous doorways, all of these spaces were designed to hold sound, to amplify it, to give weight and resonance to the voices and footsteps of gods. When those gods departed, the acoustic properties of the architecture did not change. The halls still wait for voices that will never fill them. The staircases still echo with footsteps that belong to knights on patrol. Silver knights whose armored tread is the only sound that has broken the silence in centuries. The cathedral still amplifies every clash of steel, every grunt of exertion, every death rattle, because the space was built for ceremony and spectacle, and in the absence of ceremony, battle will do. There is a theory, not stated directly in any item description, but implied by the cumulative weight of the city's design, that Anorlando was never truly a living city in the way that a human settlement is a living city. Even at the height of the Age of Fire, it may have been more temple than town, more palace than metropolis. The beings who inhabited it were gods, and gods do not need markets or bakeries or schools. They need halls of worship and chambers of power and arenas of display. Anorlando provides all of these things and nothing else. There are no kitchens, there are no bedrooms, save for the chamber where Guinevere's illusion sits. There are no gardens, no fountains, no spaces designed for rest or recreation, or the simple pleasures of daily existence. Everything is monumental. Everything is formal. Everything is built for the purpose of impressing upon any observer the magnitude and permanence of divine authority. This is a city designed not to be lived in, but to be looked at. And this realization, once it takes hold, reframes everything about the experience of being there. You are not exploring a home. You are walking through a statement. You are moving through an argument made in stone and gold. An argument that says, the gods are real, they are powerful, they are eternal, and you are small, and you should be grateful, and you should obey. Every proportion reinforces this message. The doors are too large for a human to open without effort. The staircases are too broad for a human to feel comfortable on. The corridors are too long, the ceilings too high, the space is too vast. You are constantly made aware of your own insignificance, your own inadequacy in the face of the divine. And this is deliberate. This is the architecture, doing its work, shaping your perception, priming your emotions, preparing you for the moment when the goddess will speak and you will listen. Because by the time you reach her, the city has already made you feel small enough to accept whatever you are told. This is what makes the revelation of the illusion so devastating. Not the fact that Guinevere is false, or that the sunlight is a conjuration, or that the gods have abandoned their capital. These are facts, and facts can be processed, accepted, filed away. What is devastating is the realization that the architecture was always the real deception. The illusion was never just the golden light and the phantom goddess. The illusion was the city itself, the whole vast edifice of stone and stair and buttress, the accumulated weight of 1,000 years of monumental construction. All of it designed from the very beginning to make you feel what the gods needed you to feel. Small, awed, grateful, obedient, ready to burn. The stones were laid with this purpose. The proportions were calculated for this effect. The dragons' heads were mounted for this impression. Every element of Anorlando, from the flying buttresses, to the rotating staircases, to the silver knights at their posts, is a component in a machine of persuasion that was running long before Gwyndolin added his sorcerous flourishes. The golden light was just the finishing touch. The architecture did the heavy lifting. And the architecture, unlike the illusion, does not vanish when you strike the goddess. In dark Anorlando, when the light has gone and the truth has been revealed, the buildings remain. The cathedral still towers, the buttresses still arc, the staircases still spiral, the proportions are unchanged, and you, standing in the cold twilight, are still small. This is the most unsettling thing about the truth of Anorlando. Knowing changes nothing about the space. The city was designed to make you feel a certain way, and it still makes you feel that way. Even after you know it is a ruin, even after you know the gods are gone, even after you know the light was false. The architecture has done its work on a level beneath conscious understanding, and no amount of knowledge can undo what your body felt when it walked through those doors and looked up at those vaulted ceilings and heard the echo of its own footsteps in all that empty golden space. The illusion, the real illusion, is not the one Gwendolyn cast. It is the one Gwyn built, and it is still standing. Let me speak for a moment about what Anor Londo means within the broader history of this world, because its significance extends far beyond a single location in a single game. Anor Londo is the seat of power for the Age of Fire, the era that defines the entire cosmology of this world. Everything that happens, every lord and every hollow, every linked flame and every fading ember, traces back to the moment when Gwyn found his lord soul and used it to establish dominion over the surface world. Anor Londo is where that dominion was administered. It is where the Silver Knights were trained and deployed. It is where Seath was granted his dukedom. It is where the Four Knights received their commissions. It is where the Way of White, the religion that would spread to every human settlement in Lordran and beyond, was centered and directed. It is where the Lord Vessel was kept, the single most important artifact in the entire system of fire linking. And it is where the illusion was maintained, the fiction that the age was still bright, that the gods were still present, that the fire was still strong, that the world was still ordered and meaningful and safe. When the illusion falls, when Anor Londo is revealed as the forsaken shell it truly is, the implications ripple outward through every other element of the world. If the seat of divine power is empty, what does that say about the divine power itself? If the gods have abandoned their capital, what does that mean for the humans who worship them? If the golden light is a conjuration, what other lights might be false? If the goddess is an image, what other images might be hollow? Anor Londo does not merely reveal its own truth. It casts doubt on every truth the world has offered. It makes you question the bonfires, the covenants, the miracles, the very structure of reality as it has been presented to you. If the most beautiful, most sacred, most apparently genuine thing in the world turns out to be a projection maintained by a lonely god in a basement, then nothing can be trusted, and that distrust, once planted, grows in directions the city's designers never intended. This is perhaps the most significant contribution of Anor Londo to the lore of this world. The seed of doubt, not the revelation itself, but the doubt that follows it, the nagging, persistent, corrosive uncertainty that settles into the mind of anyone who has stood in the darkened cathedral and realized that the most magnificent city they ever saw was the most empty. After that, every golden light looks suspicious. Every kind face might be a projection. Every clear purpose might be a manipulation. The wound does not heal. It is not meant to heal. It is meant to change the way you see everything that comes after. And it does. Anor Londo is sometimes described by those who study this world's history as a place of contradictions. And this is true, but the contradictions are not flaws in the lore. They are the lore. The city is simultaneously magnificent and hollow. It is both a monument to divine power and evidence of that power's collapse. It is the most beautiful place in Lordran and the most deceptive. It is the destination of a hero's journey and the bait of a trap. It houses both the Lord Vessel, the key to linking the fire, and the painted world, the prison for the things that could unmake the gods. It is guarded by knights who serve a goddess that does not exist, maintained by a god who wished he were someone else, and sustained by an illusion that works precisely because its victims are too desperate to question it. These contradictions are not accidental. They are the substance of the story. Anor is not a place where things are one thing or another. It is a place where things are both simultaneously, and the tension between those dualities is what gives the city its power, both as a location in a game and as a piece of world building. The golden light and the cold truth, the false goddess and the real ring she left behind, the faithful knights and the empty corridors they defend, the magnificent architecture and the silence that fills it, the Lord vessel that empowers and the fire that consumes. Every element of Anor exists in this state of dual nature, and the experience of being there, of gradually coming to understand the truth beneath the beauty, is the experience of holding two incompatible ideas in your mind at the same time and being unable to resolve them. This is what the city does to you. It does not lie to you and then reveal the truth. It shows you something that is simultaneously a lie and a truth, a ruin and a monument, a trap and a gift, and it asks you to decide what you believe. And whatever you decide, the city remains, golden or dark, occupied or empty, the greatest achievement of the gods who built it, and the clearest evidence of their failure. Let me return one last time to that first moment. You are standing on the high balcony, having been carried over the walls by creatures you do not understand, and the city is spread before you, and the light is golden, and the spires are reaching, and the silence is profound, and you do not yet know any of what I have told you. You do not know about Gwendolyn, or the illusion, or the empty throne, or the devouring that will come in ages yet unwritten. You know only that you are somewhere beautiful, and you are tired, and the light is warm, and for the first time in a very long while, you are not afraid. That moment is real. The feeling is genuine. The light may be false, but the relief was honest. The beauty may be constructed, but the awe was earned. The goddess may be an image, but the gratitude you felt when she handed you the Lord vessel was yours, entirely yours, and no revelation can take it back. This is the final and most important thing about Anor, the thing that elevates it beyond clever design and into something that stays with you. The illusion worked. Even knowing what it is, even understanding its purpose, even seeing through every layer of deception and manipulation and architectural coercion, the memory of that first arrival, that first glimpse of gold and stone and sky, remains indelible. You were moved. You were comforted. You were given a purpose that felt meaningful, even if that meaning was manufactured. And the fact that it was manufactured does not retroactively erase the feeling. The golden city lives in you, in the space between what you saw and what was real. And it lives there because you let it, because you chose to, because the alternative was too cold and too dark and too honest, and because sometimes, even in a world that is dying, even in a city built on lies, even under a sun that is nothing but a spell cast by a lonely god in a tomb, the light feels good on your face, and that is enough. And that is Anor, the golden city, the seat of gods who left, the illusion that endured because it was too beautiful to question and too necessary to abandon. A monument to order that conceals the chaos of its own emptiness. A cathedral of light built over a foundation of silence. The most magnificent stage in Lordran, where every act was performed for an audience of one, and the performance never ended, because ending would mean admitting that the show was over, and the show could never be over, because the show was the only thing keeping the lights on, and the lights were the only thing keeping anyone from seeing the dark. If this account has been a companion to you, a voice in the quiet between the bonfires, I would be grateful if you stayed a while longer with this archive. There are more records to uncover, more histories to trace through the ash and the silence, and your presence here gives them weight. A word of thanks and a like or a subscription ensures that these stories continue to be told, that the dark does not swallow what deserves to be remembered. Until the next record then, rest at the bonfire. The journey continues.